Hello and welcome back to goldstocktrades.com. Today we have with us Dusty Nickel, CEO of European Uranium. European Uranium can be traded as EUU on the venture. Thanks, Dusty, for being here with us today.
Oh, thanks, Jeff, for having me back.
Dusty, can you tell us about nuclear in Europe? Is nuclear power a vital part of the energy future of Europe?
Yeah, nuclear remains a very important part of Europe's energy mix. Europe right now has, this precise number depends a little bit on where one draws the boundaries of Europe, but a reasonable number is 160 operating nuclear reactors. Despite some of what I think have been politically driven statements recently by Germany and Switzerland expressing a desire to get away from nuclear power, this doesn't appear to be terribly realistic for the continent as a whole, although Germany and Switzerland are trying to cut back on nuclear power and have expressed a desire to get away from it totally. Most of Europe does not view that as realistic. In fact, the response to Germany's statement a few months ago was Poland's decision to start construction of a nuclear plant on the Baltic. Finland is going ahead with an expansion of its nuclear power base. Slovakia, which currently has 4 reactors in operation, is expanding to 2 more. Spain has found that it simply cannot continue to afford the subsidies it has had in place for wind and solar and so on, and they've extended the life of their reactors. So it's just about impossible for any reasonable person to see a future energy mix for Europe that does not continue to depend heavily on nuclear power.
Dusty, tell us about the supply of uranium mines, what uranium mines are producing, and where does European uranium fit into the mines that are online?
Well, Europe right now, despite being the world's largest per capita consumer of uranium for nuclear power, the continent only has 1 uranium mine currently in operation. That's the Dolna-Rosinka mine in the Czech Republic, which produces about 200 tons of uranium per year. To give you some context, Slovakia consumes 312 tons of uranium per year. Dolna-Rosinka produces 200 tons. There will be some byproduct uranium coming online from a nickel mine in Finland before too long. But even with that coming online, Europe will still be a net consumer of uranium. Coincidentally, the uranium oxide that's produced from the Dolna-Rosinka mine in Czech Republic passes by rail within just a few kilometers of our Kuriskova deposit in Slovakia on its way to Russia for enrichment and processing. Back to your earlier question about the future for nuclear power, I will say that I do believe there is a role for the so-called renewable energy sources of solar and wind and so on. But for the foreseeable future, base load power generation in Europe has to depend on some combination of nuclear, gas, and coal. Now, coal has its obvious environmental problems from carbon emissions due to the burning of coal and obvious environmental problems from the mining of coal, particularly Central European coal deposits, which tend to be the lower grade brown coal type. So we don't see coal really filling the hole in Europe's energy mix. Gas these days is mostly dependent on production from Russia, and no one in Europe wants to be dependent on Russia for gas supplies. Everyone in Slovakia, for example, remembers 3 winters ago when, due to a political quarrel, Russia turned off the spigot on the gas lines, and Slovakia was crippled during one of the worst winters in recent Central European history. There's some talk of possible expansion of gas production within Central Europe. There's a possibility, at least a hypothetical possibility right now, some gas production using what in North America we call hydrofracking technology. but it's not yet clear that the basins in Central Europe can provide a meaningful amount of gas through those means. And there's a great deal of environmental opposition due to the uncertain effects of hydrofracking on the aquifers that would be affected. These would probably be affected more in Europe than they are in North America, just due to the relative depth locations of the aquifers and the gas deposits. So again, coming back to the thesis, we see for the foreseeable future the continent of Europe being a major consumer of uranium, with at present no secure within the continent sources.
Let's look at Slovakia. Slovakia recently elected a new prime minister in March, and he continues to be pro-nuclear. Can you tell us more about the situation in Slovakia right now?
Yeah, the prime minister now is Robert Fico, spelled Fico. He was the prime minister as leader of a coalition until a few years ago. He's back in now. The difference now is he was reelected with his party having a clear legislative majority in parliament. Prime Minister Fico has always been one of the leading proponents of nuclear energy in Europe. It's his stated ambition to make Slovakia a center not only for nuclear power generation, but for nuclear research. His party, the Smer Party, which in Slovak means forward, is very supportive of nuclear energy. It is the party that, in its stated long-term energy strategy for Slovakia, published 4 years ago, named the Kuriskova deposit as an important potential source of uranium for Slovakia, and stated that domestic uranium sources should be developed in a safe and sustainable way. So we view it as very positive for us that Prime Minister Fico's party is in power now, not only in power, but with a clear majority in parliament and in most of the regional governments.
In other parts of the world, we've seen the rise of resource nationalism, like in places like Argentina. Do you see that possibly being in Slovakia, or is Slovakia different?
No, I don't. Slovakia is now part of the European Union, and it's inconceivable that a country in the European Union will go basically take 3 steps back in history to go the route of natural resource nationalizations that we're beginning to see recurring again, as they seem to every other generation in South America. Having said that, it's important for the development of any uranium deposits in Kuriskova, or in any country for that matter, but certainly the Kuriskova deposit in Slovakia must be developed in a way that conforms to Slovak energy policy and in a way that benefits Slovak energy policy. We've never made a secret of the fact, since current management has been managing this company, that we felt Kuriskova should be developed in a way that benefits Slovakia. Now, whether that's an off-take arrangement or a joint venture or beneficial terms on some of the production, we don't know yet. It's early days. But it is very clearly, in order to have political support, the project must be developed in a way that benefits Slovakia, as is only right and only natural. But no, we don't see any risk of nationalization or the rules being changed or the type of thing that happens from time to time in South America or Africa, that one gets almost to production and then the basic tenure laws are changed. In a country that's a full and firmly committed member of European Union, that's just impossible.
Dusty, can you tell us, in early 2012, Areva became a major shareholder, and I know with the Kuriskova project that not only could it possibly supply Slovakia, but it could also possibly supply other countries in the EU. Can you tell us about the project itself and the significance of Areva coming on the board and assisting with some of the technical services?
Yeah, well, for context, what we see from the pre-feasibility study we published early this year is that Kuriskova can be one of the lowest cost uranium producers in the world. This is entirely due to the high grade of the deposit. We're expecting life of mine production costs of under $23 a pound and production costs the first 4 years of under $17 per pound. There are a few ways to dice and parse the statistics on production, but the most useful context is provided by seeing that approximately 25% of Kuriskova's uranium production over a currently planned 13-year mine life, 25% of that production would be sufficient to provide Slovakia with 100% of its current domestic uranium consumption. So the idea there is that once Kuriskova is in production, 25% of the production can be allocated for Slovakia's consumption. The remaining 75% is available for someone else. The significance of Areva coming in is twofold. First of all, we think that they're taking such a major position in our company represented a stamp of credibility or market prestige that was very important to us. Areva clearly did a lot of due diligence on us, and among all the companies they could have invested in and all the projects that they could have picked, they chose ours, which we view as a real stamp of credibility on everything we've done. Beyond that, the association with Areva gives us access to their technical facilities, their expertise. For example, we'll be doing the next round of metallurgical testing on our samples in their facilities in the south of France. Going back to Slovakia next week to host their mining engineering team to come and review our mine plan and give us their comments. It's just been superb for us to have access to that expertise and that pool of talent. It also has done a lot for us in Slovakia, although we have been very well known in Slovakia since Al and I took over management of the company. We have very good contacts in Slovakia. The presence of Areva with us has removed us from the arena of junior exploration company and given us that added level of prestige and credibility that's important in being able to consummate senior level agreements with government officials.
Can you tell us about the recent completed metallurgical drilling program?
Yeah, we just finished drilling 3 PQ, which just means relatively large diameter drill holes. The purpose of that is to further refine our metallurgical process flow sheet. We're very comfortable with the flow sheet that we have in the pre-feasibility study. That's based on hundreds of kilograms of samples that came from earlier drill core in the deposit. But to progress now through a feasibility study from the pre-feas, we wanted to have more sample weight in order to do more detailed testing. 2, previous testing was done on composites from different drill holes to give us all the different ranges of grades we expected. What we're doing now is taking it to the next level of detail. With the 3 drill holes we've put in, we've gotten enough mineralized core to be able to put together composites that represent various years of production through the life of mine. We're able to now mix, blend, and match so that we can recreate what we anticipate the ore blends to look like during each year of production, and then we'll test those individually in order to be able to further refine what the process and production profile will look like year by year. The really good news that we got from the drilling is we, of course, targeted these holes to go into parts of the deposit where we had good geologic information and were expecting to be developing a detailed mine plan. In 2 of the 3 holes, we got mineralization that was both thicker and higher grade than we'd anticipated from previous drilling. The 3rd one was a little bit thinner and a little bit lower grade. But all in all, what it's telling us, it's confirming our belief that our resource modeling has been conservative and that once we're really into this deposit, it will end up looking even better than it already does. And it's already one of the highest grade deposits in the world.
Well, thanks, Dusty, for being here with us today and for giving us an update on European uranium.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeb. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I'll look forward to continuing our discussions.